Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, we invite you to step into a story that begins in the quiet streets of Columbia, Illinois. A place where life once seemed simple, safe, and serene. But on May 5, 2009, that peace was shattered, torn apart by an act so unthinkable, so chilling it left an entire community reeling in disbelief. This is the tale of the Coleman family. Sherry, a devoted mother. Garrett and Gavin, two young boys with hearts of gold. And Christopher, a man whose life hid secrets. Secrets that would unravel into a nightmare of betrayal, violence, and loss. What you're about to hear is more than a crime. It's a journey through the depths of human emotion, the fragility of trust, and the haunting echoes of a tragedy that still linger on the walls of a home and in the hearts of those left behind. So please prepare yourselves, take a deep breath, and join us as we uncover the writing on the wall, the Christopher Coleman case. A quiet morning shattered. May 5, 2009 began like any other Tuesday in Columbia, Illinois, a small, peaceful suburb just outside St. Louis. The sun was barely up, casting a soft glow over orderly rows of houses, manicured lawns, tree-lined streets. It was the kind of place where neighbors waved hello, where kids played football in the front yards, where families felt safe. But that morning a shadow fell, a shadow that would linger for years, etched into the memories of everyone who lived there. Christopher Coleman, 32 years old, a former Marine, head of security for televangelist Joyce Meyer, started his day with routine normalcy. He left his home at around 5 a.m., headed for the gym, as he often did. The Coleman residence, a two-story house on Robert Drive, was quiet when he departed. Inside, his wife, Sherry Coleman, 31, and their two sons, Garrett, 11, and Gavin, 9, were presumably still asleep. A picture-perfect family, or so it seemed. A loving mother, two bright, polite boys, a father with a steady, high-profile job. But beneath the surface, something dark had been brewing for months. At around 6:43 a.m., as Christopher crossed the Jefferson Barracks Bridge, on his way back from the gym, he dialed his wife's number. No answer. He tried again. Still, nothing. Growing uneasy, he called his neighbor, Justin Barlow, a detective sergeant with the Columbia Police Department. "I'm worried," Christopher said, his voice tight. "Sherry's not picking up. She should be awake by now. Can you check on them?" Barlow, who'd lived across the street from the Colemans for 5 years, didn't hesitate. Christopher's tone carried concern, perhaps even fear, and it wasn't the first time. The family had been on edge. For months, they'd been receiving threats, ominous messages, targeting Christopher's work with Joyce Meyer Ministries. The police had been involved, patrols increased, the tension mounting. Barlow grabbed his gear, walked across the street to the Coleman house. It was just before 7 a.m. when he approached the front door. He knocked. No response. He peered through the windows, but the curtains blocked his view. Nothing seemed out of place, yet instinct told him to check around the property. He circled to the back, descended the steps to the basement level. There, he found an open window, its latch undone, swaying slightly in the morning breeze. A chill ran through him. This wasn't right. The Colemans had been on high alert. Why would a window be left unsecured? Barlow climbed through the window into the basement, his flashlight cutting through the dimness. He moved cautiously up the stairs, emerging into the kitchen. The first thing that hit him was the smell. Sharp, chemical, unmistakable. Spray paint. He turned left, followed the hallway, and froze. Scrawled across the wall in jagged red letters was a message. Punished. It was chaotic, reminiscent of the Manson family's helter-skelter scrawlings. A declaration of violence and intent. Barlow's heart sank. He knew this was no prank. Something terrible had happened here. He continued upstairs, each step heavier than the last. On the staircase wall, another message glared back at him. "You have paid." The words pulsed with malice, a prelude to the horror awaiting him. At the top of the stairs, 3 bedrooms branched off the hallway. To the left, the master bedroom. Inside, Sherry Coleman lay lifeless on the bed, her body still, her face bruised, with 2 black eyes, a sign she'd fought for her life. To the right, in the first boy's bedroom, 11-year-old Garrett was found in his bed, a sheet pulled over him. Red spray paint stained the fabric, seeping onto his skin, another message defiling his small, motionless form. In the third bedroom, 9-year-old Gavin lay, similarly still. All 3 mother, eldest son, youngest son, had been strangled in their sleep. Barlow stood there, the weight of the scene crushing him. As a detective, he'd seen death before, but this was different. This was personal. These were his neighbors, people he'd waved to, smiled at, lived alongside. "If you don't believe in evil," he would later say, "I hope you do now." A community in shock. By the time Christopher Coleman pulled into his driveway, police were swarming the property. Barlow met him at the garage, his face grim. "They didn't make it," Barlow said, his voice steady but heavy. Christopher's reaction was immediate, visceral. He sank to the pavement, curling into a fetal position, sobbing uncontrollably. "I feel like I'm gonna throw up," he gasped. Officers guided him away from the house. As the crime scene unit took over, sealing off the area with yellow tape, word spread quickly through Columbia. Neighbors gathered at the edges of their lawns, whispering in disbelief. Vanessa Rigorex, who lived down the street, had woken to the sound of sirens. When she saw the police cars clustered at the Coleman house, she texted Sherry, "Is everything okay?" No reply came. "I always thought of them as the American family," she later told reporters, her voice trembling. "The perfect family. Polite boys, a heart of gold. Everybody wanted their kids to be like Garrett and Gavin." The community reeled. Columbia, with its small-town charm, its low crime rate, wasn't prepared for this. Chief Joe Edwards, head of the Columbia Police Department, knew his 2 investigators, Barlow included, couldn't handle a case of this magnitude alone. He called in the Major Case Squad, a specialized unit of 25 seasoned officers from across the region, led by Major Jeff Connor. "We're doing all we can to find out what happened in this house," Edwards told the press, his jaw tight with determination. Inside the Coleman home, the CSI team processed the scene. The lack of blood didn't make it less gruesome. The spray-painted messages, "Punished," "You have paid," and others scattered throughout, spoke of a calculated brutality. The open basement window suggested an intruder, but there was no forced entry, no signs of a struggle beyond Sherry's injuries. Warrants were issued for the family's phones and computers, and Christopher, still distraught, was taken to the police station to give his statement. A man under scrutiny. At the station, Christopher sat across from detectives, his hands trembling. He recounted his morning, leaving at 5 a.m., hitting the gym, calling Sherry repeatedly to wake her, 6 a.m., 6:43 a.m., and then contacting Barlow when she didn't answer. It was a normal morning, he insisted, but the detectives noticed something odd. He didn't ask how his family died. He didn't press for details. His grief seemed genuine. Tears, shaking, a broken voice. But there was a detachment, a lack of curiosity that gnawed at them. "What time did you leave the house?" a detective asked. "Around 5 a.m., Christopher replied. "And you called her at 6 o'clock? "Yeah, 6:43 too." She didn't pick up. The timeline was tight. The bodies had been discovered shortly before 7 a.m., and rigor mortis suggested they'd been dead for hours, possibly since 3 a.m. If Christopher had left at 5 o'clock, could someone have entered the house in that narrow window? Or had the killings happened earlier, when he was still home? The threats provided a starting point. Since November 2008, Christopher had reported receiving menacing messages at his work email. "Tell Joyce to stop preaching the bull," one read. If I can't get to Joyce, I'll get to someone close to her. The police had increased patrols around the Coleman home as a precaution. In January 2009, a handwritten note appeared in their mailbox. Deny your God publicly or else. No more opportunities. Time is running out. For you and your family. Then, on April 27th, just days before the murders, a final threat arrived. Stop today or else. I know your schedule. You can't hide from me forever. I'm always watching. Barlow had taken action, installing a camera in his 5-year-old's bedroom window, pointed at the Coleman mailbox, 214 feet away. Christopher had added his own surveillance cameras inside the house. Yet neither system captured anything suspicious. No strangers, no unfamiliar vehicles. And now the recorder for Christopher's cameras was missing. Convenient, Barlow muttered to a colleague. As detectives pressed Christopher, another detail emerged. Was there anything going on in your marriage? They asked. Any problems? No, not really, he said, shaking his head. Communication was fine. Had you seen anyone else? He paused, then offered a name. Tara Lintz, a cocktail waitress from Florida, an old high school friend of Sherry's. I've talked to her a lot lately, he admitted. Just a friend, someone to talk to. He insisted there was no affair, that their conversations were innocent. Maybe a little inappropriate, but nothing more. The detectives exchanged glances. This was a lead worth pursuing. A double life revealed. While Christopher sat in the interrogation room, the major case squad reached out to police in St. Petersburg, Florida, Tara's hometown. Detective Shannon Holstead drove to Tara's address, expecting a quick chat. What she found changed everything. Tara handed over her BlackBerry and laptop, revealing a trove of emails, videos, photos, documenting her relationship with Christopher. I think this is his girlfriend, Holstead told her Illinois counterparts over the phone, her voice edged with certainty. Back in Columbia, Barlow confronted Christopher. St. Petersburg police are talking to Tara right now, he said. She showed us pictures, intimate ones, of you too. We know you've been having an affair. Christopher's face paled, but he stuck to his story. We're just friends, he insisted. I met her through Sherry when we vacationed in Florida. It's not what you think. The evidence told a different tale. The affair had begun in the fall of 2008. 6 months before the murders, Christopher had flown Tara to meet him at various locations, where he worked for Joyce Meyer, Hawaii, Arizona, wherever his job took him. They'd rented cars together, shared hotel rooms, planned a future. Tara's calendar marked a wedding date with Christopher. Vacations, even joint credit card accounts. She believed he was leaving Sherry and the boys for her. He said he was serving Sherry divorce papers on May 5th, Tara later told police. The very day of the murders, detectives dug deeper. Christopher's phone and computer held incriminating secrets. Explicit photos, videos, love notes. He documented Tara's measurements, her favorite things, as if building a life with her in his mind. On November 5th, 2008, he'd written on his laptop, Tara changed my life. 9 days later, the first threat arrived. Coincidence? The police didn't think so. A motive takes shape. Christopher's parents, Pastor Ron Coleman and Kania, were blindsided by the affair. He's always been gentle, quiet, Ron said, his voice breaking. There's no way he could do this. They clung to the belief that an intruder, someone angered by Joyce Meyer's ministry, had targeted the family. But the evidence kept pointing back to Christopher. Sherry's autopsy revealed she'd fought her killer fiercely. 2 black eyes, defensive wounds, while the boys showed no signs of struggle, suggesting they'd been attacked in their sleep. Scratches on Christopher's arms noticed at the scene raised suspicions. He claimed he'd gotten them the day before, removing a satellite dish from the roof. He asked for a blanket during the interview, Barlow recalled. Said he was cold, but he only covered his arms where the marks were. The room had been warm. No foreign DNA turned up. No boogeyman, as Barlow put it. But the spray paint offered a breakthrough. A can matching the brand and color used at the scene had been purchased at a local hardware store, and the receipt bore Christopher's name. Handwriting samples he'd voluntarily provided matched the scrawled messages on the walls. And those threats? Computer experts traced them to an email account, destroychris@gmail.com, created on Christopher's laptop. After 6 hours of questioning, the police lacked enough to charge him. Christopher walked out free. But the net was tightening. A community mourns, a case builds. The murders left Columbia shattered. A memorial sprang up in the subdivision. A bench, trees, a tribute to Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin. They were stolen from us, said Megan Turnbow, a neighbor. We wanted something positive to remember them by. Friends like Kathy LaPlante grieved deeply. Sherry was my sister, she wept. She was a loving mom. My life's not the same. Sherry's brother Mario and mother Angela struggled to process the loss. She was beautiful inside and out, Angela said, tears streaming. Those boys were her world. Garrett was quiet, a thinker. Gavin was outgoing, a social butterfly. Just like his mom. The brutality was incomprehensible. The major case squad chased leads tied to the threats. Interviewing Joyce Meyer critics nationwide. None panned out. Meanwhile, Christopher's affair with Tara became public, stripping away any sympathy. I felt stabbed in the heart, Kathy said. I couldn't wait for him to be arrested. On May 19, 2009, 2 weeks after the murders, Christopher Coleman was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. The community demanded justice, their anger palpable. If it was another time, they'd have pitchforks, Barlow noted. The trial, a puzzle of circumstance. By April 2011, when Christopher's trial began, prosecutor Ed Parkinson had spent 2 years assembling a 10,000-piece puzzle. The case drew massive media attention, prompting the judge to bus in a jury from 90 minutes away. The biggest challenge, Parkinson said, was convincing jurors a parent could kill his kids. He looked like a good guy. The prosecution argued Christopher killed his family before leaving for the gym. Driven by greed, lust, and narcissism, rigor mortis pegged the time of death around 3 a.m., contradicting his alibi. Sherry's friends testified he'd lied about his marriage, claiming he'd told her he never loved her and wanted out yet hid it from their counselor. Joyce Meyer, in a deposition, confirmed adultery could cost Christopher his $100,000 a year job. Sherry had discovered the affair, confronting him with Tara's photos. If anything happens to me, she told Kathy, Chris did it. Tara's testimony was explosive, escorted into court like a celebrity. She described their constant communication, their love, and their plans. The divorce had to happen first, she said simply. Explicit videos and photos sealed the motive. Christopher wanted a new life with Tara, but Sherry wouldn't let go. The defense, led by John O'Gara and Bill Margolis, faced an uphill battle. They argued an intruder killed the family during Christopher's gym trip, questioning the time of death's precision. They suggested someone else sent the threats from his laptop, but the lack of foreign DNA, the spray paint receipt, the handwriting match were damning. Christopher didn't testify. After 15 hours of deliberation, the jury initially split 7-5 not guilty, found him guilty on all counts. A photo of him kissing Tara dated October 21, 2008. Before he claimed the affair began, tipped the scales. If he lied about that, a juror said, he's lying about everything. On May 5, 2011, 2 years to the day, cheers erupted outside the courthouse as the verdict was read. A life sentence and lingering pain. Christopher was sentenced to life without parole, spared the death penalty by Illinois' repeal months later. From prison, he maintained his innocence. I loved my wife and kids, he said in a phone interview. I lied to Tara about divorce papers, but I didn't kill them. I've racked my brain for years. Who did? Sherry's loved ones focused on healing. They raised funds for domestic violence victims, dreamed of a little league field in the boys' names. They didn't deserve this, Kathy said, her voice soft. Forgiving is hard, but I try. For Sherry. For Columbia, May 5th remains a scar, a day when evil tore through a perfect family, leaving only questions, grief, and the haunting echo of red paint on the walls.